Welcome to this episode of The Heart of the Matter. Today we're going to be talking about housing, and our guest who's going to talk to us about housing is Mr. Sam Odia, who is the Nigerian National Director of the Fuller Center. They have a housing initiative called the Fuller Center for Housing. You're welcome, Sam, to The Heart of the Matter.
Thank you very much indeed, Pastor Wale.
Now, you're not just talking about housing, because housing is a major problem for many Nigerians. If you just drive through some parts of our nation, you find people living in makeshift homes with flimsy cloths to protect them. So you're really talking about affordable housing.
That's right.
What is affordable housing?
Right. Nigeria is said to have a deficit of about 16 million houses. In other words, almost half of the population live in housing that is not 16 million housing deficit. So if we assume that about 5 people live on average in a house, we're talking about 80 million people, or almost half of the population, living in inadequate housing. Not that they don't have housing at all, but that housing could be under the bridge, or in an informal settlement, as you have well described, where there is no planning all around, a ghetto settlement and so forth, or in a rural setting where perhaps they're using thatch. I mean, we often from the south here have a slightly different impression of poverty. There's a lot more wealth in the southern parts of Nigeria, but I've lived for the last 14 years in the north. And as you move up north in this country, Nigeria, you discover that there's a greater degree of poverty, and that a lot of people are living in, well, for them it may seem adequate. It's what they have lived in all their lives and what their forefathers and forebears have lived in. But it's really very, very poor housing. Normally there'd be leakage in the roof. Perhaps they're using thatch or tin roofs with holes all over them. They'd be perhaps very poor qualities, windows and door openings, very bad flooring. Many people don't even have a proper floor in their houses. Basically inadequate housing is what we're talking about. And what our organization, which is the Nigerian arm of the Fuller Center for Housing, is trying to do is to ensure, our vision is to ensure that everybody in Nigeria has access to a simple, decent and affordable house. Simple, decent and affordable. We're not talking of big houses, we're not talking of elaborate houses, just something that's really, really basic, which they can call a roof over their heads, and which helps to get them into the housing ladder, so that as their families increase in size and as their own means improve, they are able to move into better housing. But let them start off with that, at least. So that, in essence, is what my organization is doing.
So when you say affordable housing, we're talking really about the price as well. So you're talking about adequate housing, yes, but also it must be within people's reach. That's your objective. Now, can you give me a ballpark figure of the kind of value of the house that you produce?
Our definition of affordable housing is housing that is affordable to the median income or to the average income in any given locality. So Nigerians don't earn that much. We often feel that our neighbor next door is an average person, that we are average people, whereas we're not. The average income in Nigeria today is less than 10,000 naira a month. So even minimum wage of 18,000 naira is way above average income in Nigeria. That may surprise you.
Yes.
And but if we even take the 18,000 naira minimum wage, what sort of a house would a person earning 18,000 naira be able to afford if he was spending, say, 30% of his income on housing? That's about 6,000 naira a month. Even if he were to get a mortgage, which was at zero interest, without any interest, 6,000 naira a month for 12 months would be 72,000 naira a year. And if he were to pay that mortgage or repay it over 10 years, you'd be talking of a house of about 720,000 naira. Over 20 years, about 1.4 million. That's a mortgage that has no interest. Obviously, such a mortgage is almost impossible. There are a few NGOs. Our organization actually does give zero interest mortgages to some people, But there are very few organizations that are able to do this. For the most part, people would have to get money from the open money market at huge interest rates. And then we'd be talking of a house then that would be of an even smaller value because of the interest payment that needs to be made. So really, affordable housing in Nigeria ought to be housing that's less than #1 million, if you were to give a figure to it, about #1 million. Even we are not doing that yet. I mean, we had started, it's interesting because we've gone through a sort of evolution. The Fuller Center came to Nigeria 10 years ago, so this is our 10th year in Nigeria, and we're actually celebrating our 10th anniversary this year. But in those 10 years, we had started by depending entirely on donor funding. So we would get money usually from offshore sources, grants, to help build houses for very low-income families. And basically what we would charge them would be the cost of the house, without any interest and without any profit attached to it. The very first houses that we built in the Abuja area cost just 240,000 naira. And it's very interesting because when we started building these houses, and what we demanded of applicants was pay 60,000 naira deposit and then pay the balance over a 4-year period, which came to about 5,000 naira a month. Later on, soon after that, the price edged up to about 360,000 for a basic studio apartment with its own little bathroom and its own little kitchenette as a step zero house. Basically, what we were promoting was an incremental housing system where you would move into this very basic housing, and when you had finished paying off the loan of this house, you could sell it back to the organization and then move into a slightly bigger house. And in that way, as your family increases in size and as your means also improve, you're able to move incrementally into the house of your dreams. So it might not be an ideal house initially, but it's a start. And that's what we set out to do. Now, these houses edged from about 240,000 naira to 360,000 naira. And even at that, we had a lot of people, there was a lot of wariness, obviously, people knowing the sort of things that happen in our society. People didn't believe that. How can you get your own house? Is this for rent or is this for sale? And people say, they say that they're selling these units for 360,000. So there was a lot of apprehension, and we almost had to sort of beg people. But we had a number of people. I remember that El Rufai, who was the minister of the FCT at that time, was demolishing a lot of houses, and some people found themselves in this situation where their houses had just been demolished. So they were left with no choice but to come to us and say, look, what can you do for us? Our houses have been demolished. We need a house desperately. Our families are out into the open. And so when we asked them to pay the deposit of 60,000, they did that and they got their keys. And when people realized that this was not a hoax, but a real venture housing scheme, we had almost the whole of Abuja at our doorsteps. But obviously, depending on donor funding, this was not going to be sustainable. There was a limit to the number of houses that we could provide. So we have looked in more recent times to a much more sustainable model now of promoting our housing and building and providing the housing, still at a relatively cheaper rate. I mean, our houses now have gone up to $1 million and even beyond. But still, they're still very cheap when you look at comparative housing on the Nigerian market.
Okay, we'll be back in a moment to talk more about these houses. Viewers, we're going to take a short break now. Stay tuned to the Heart of the Matter.
Standing here today in Luvu Village, Nigeria, where we've completed 54 homes, and it's just a little taste of the work that the Fuller Center is doing all around the world. We have people here who are just so happy to have a place that they never thought would be possible for them and their family and their kids. We have a place where they can stay dry at night, stay safe, a place where they can give their kids a brighter future, a healthier future. And so it's such a joy for me just to be able to walk through and see the fruits of our work, because I know for me and for so many of the people who are involved with this ministry, you don't get this opportunity to always to meet some of the families, to see the real impact that we're having around the world. But here today I'm getting that opportunity, and it's really a heartwarming experience, the kind of thing that gets you fired back up, wants to make you go out there and get busy again, keep working, telling our story, what we're doing, raising money, making donations, so that this work can continue. And the project here is very interested, very eager to have work teams come. So you can come and visit here too. Come be a part of this, meet these same families, help the next set of families have a good place to live. So thanks to everyone for everything you've done to make this village a reality, but it's not done yet. We need more help. Come visit, come donate, come be a part of this. Thanks everyone.
Welcome back to the Heart of the Matter, where I'm talking with Sam Odia about affordable housing. Now, Sam, you talked about the fact that the houses the basic houses, the first houses you built were small, maybe studio apartment with a bathroom, kitchen facilities, etc. And you know, some people just would have to cope with that, but at least they'd put their foot on the first rung of the housing ladder. Were these properties in blocks of flat sort of things, or were they individual dwelling places?
Well, we were building, for the most part, blocks of 4 units each.
Okay.
So they were semi-detached units. We still build, to a large extent, semi-detached units up till now. You find that when there's a partition wall, it tends to cut down costs drastically. So rather than build standalones, which are a little more expensive, we're able to join them in 2s and 3s and 4s. So that's how we build them, yes.
Okay, so now, of course, they've got to be a little bit more expensive because of the costs and so on and so forth. About how many houses are you aiming to build?
Well, we have a huge vision. We have a vision to provide millions of houses for Nigeria over the next 10 to 20 years. But we started really fairly small. Over the last 10 years, building on a donor model, we were only able to build about 120 housing units. We have moved up now. We have a new partner who's supporting us, Real UK, which used to be Homeless International. They're pumping a lot of money into our programs now, and we have a scheme where we're building about 500 houses this year, for instance. Last year we built about 220. We intend to double those numbers successively year after year, so that we should be building about 1,000 houses a year in the next couple of years. So at the moment now, we have about 220 houses on ground, and we've started on the next lot of 500 houses.
Now, you said that the donor model, which is depending mainly on foreign donors, is not as effective, and that you're rejigging your model. Can you tell us just how you intend to finance building houses going forward?
Yes. Well, with a deficit of 16 million, obviously Nigeria needs trillions. I think it's been estimated that we need about 4 trillion naira to bridge the housing gap. This is a huge amount, and I think at the end of the day, it's not going to be donor funding, certainly. It's not going to be money even from the money market, but perhaps more likely from the capital market, that we're going to need to sustain the rate at which we need to build to provide houses for Nigerians. Now,
so when you say the capital market, for the benefit of our viewers, you're saying investors.
Investors, yes. So investors, we need to be able to, first of all, prove the affordable housing building model. So basically what we're doing with the new partner that we have on ground now is that we're trying to work with soft loans, which are all still coming from abroad, and we're trying to ensure and to use these monies and turn them around with a small profit margin to show that there is a profitability in providing basic housing to ordinary Nigerians. Once we're able to prove this, and we are beginning to prove it, in the next 2-3 years, with a track record showing the amount of profit that has been made over those years, we can now go to investors and say, look, you can make this amount of money if you invest in this program. People tend to feel that money invested in poor people is money lost, but that is not necessarily the case. There have been many different ventures all around the world. There's a Grameen, the famous Grameen Bank, which started in Pakistan, which began a whole bank giving microcredit. Microcredit has now become very popular all around the world, but at the time that Muhammad Yunus started this, people said, no, you can't invest in the poor. The poor will never pay you. They don't have the money to pay. But the poor can pay and will pay. We have proved this over and over again, that the poor do have the money and can pay. The key thing is to be able to provide a product that meets their needs at a cost that they can afford. And this is what we're doing at the Millard Fuller Foundation. Incidentally, I didn't say earlier that the Fuller Center for Housing Nigeria is registered as the Millard Fuller Foundation here in Nigeria. So we go by that name, the Millard Fuller Foundation.
The Millard Fuller Foundation.
Yeah.
Now, just developing what you said, you're looking to investors as opposed to going to borrow money from the financial markets. The kind of investor you're looking for, would this be somebody that wants to make a killing? Or because in talking to you before we came on air, you talked about social impact investors. Could you just develop that?
Yes. Well, it's actually stage by stage. We are getting money from the money market now. We are taking loans from banks. We see ourselves in the next 3 years, perhaps less, 2 years, getting money from social impact investors. These are basically investors who are just as interested in ensuring that the money that they're investing in a corporation, in a venture, has deep social impact, is able to change the lives of people as much as they are interested in getting a return. Return is not everything for them. So whereas a typical investor is purely interested in getting a returns on his investment, these sort of investors are just as interested, perhaps even more interested in ensuring that the money invested is changing the world.
Okay. So what you're saying is not that they will not get any returns. Yes. If you put an investment in, you should at least be able to get the invested amount out. Exactly. And a little profit. Yes. So it's people who have a heart, yes, to see a transformation in our housing market.
Precisely, that is it.
Okay, so are these kind of people that easy to come by in this, our Nigerian environment?
Yes. I think there are more good people in Nigeria than we care to believe, and I think if people realized and saw that, there are institutions that are doing good work and that are creating the change that they would like to see, that such people will begin to pop up. I think all of us have a soft side to us, however hard we may be, and in one way or the other, we're probably already making social investments, perhaps in our families on a small scale, without really recognizing that we are. So I think I think the issues here are just ensuring that, you're able to communicate to the investment public and let them know that you have a track record and that you're able to do what you say you will do.
Yeah. And just also to tell them that if you have money in the bank now, yes, it will not with interest earn you as much as you probably will earn, yes, if you invest in housing.
Precisely.
Now, you've built houses in Abuja. Have you built in any of the other states?
Our vision is to be all over Nigeria building. Abuja just happens to be our own little Jerusalem, okay, which is where we started for logistic reasons and for the fact that the head office is there. We've started there. We are looking to working in other states. We would love to be in every state of the Federation. We would love to be in every local government of Nigeria. There's nowhere where housing isn't required or housing isn't needed. This new government came in with a promise of building about 1 million houses a year. We're here to partner with them. We would love to be able to partner with government and with state governments especially who are in control of the land to be able to provide houses for the marginalized. For so long we have spoken of housing, we have carried out housing programs, most of which have been completely inaccessible to the people who've needed it most. And we want to change the tables around. We want to change the way that housing is perceived, first of all, and that housing provision is done in Nigeria, so that the real people down there at the bottom of the ladder, the 80% of Nigerians who earn less than 50,000 naira a month, are able to access simple basic and adequate housing.
Okay, now a huge proportion of the cost of a house is the land that it is built on. And it seems as if land goes at a premium in Nigeria, especially in cities like Lagos and certain parts of Lagos. What can you do to convince state governments and federal government to let you have land at affordable rates so that the houses you deliver cost a lot less than they would otherwise?
Yes, we're trying to convince them. The governments realize, I think to a large part, that they're responsible for basic infrastructure. This doesn't always happen. Many times developers, and one of the reasons why housing is so expensive in Nigeria is because most developers have to put in the primary as well as the secondary infrastructure. They have to tar their roads, provide the water, provide the electricity, and so forth. If they didn't have to do this, we're building, we have an estate at the moment on the outskirts of Abuja, which is where we usually buy land, in the outskirts of largest cities where land is a lot cheaper. But even there, we have to provide all the infrastructure ourselves. We're building houses from about 1.5, 1.6 million at the moment.
Of course, the people have to commute into town to work.
Precisely.
And that transport is not always readily available.
Although you do find that most people are already living in those sort of areas anyway and are already commuting to their jobs in the city. So basically, and these are the people that are living in informal settlements. So if you begin to provide planned estates and settlements for them, they can move from their squatter settlements into much better planned environments. And this is what we're trying to do. We'd love to see a situation where government can be more alive to its responsibilities, providing basic infrastructure, roads, tarring the roads, getting the water, getting the electricity to care areas, particularly outside of the major cities. This would help to bring down costs quite drastically.
Wonderful. Now, what about the cost of buying the house? I mean, you said you're hoping to be able to deliver homes at ₦1 million. The kind of people that need these homes may not earn enough to be able to pay ₦1 million for a house.
That's very, very true. One of the key things that we need to do is to develop a robust mortgage system in Nigeria. We haven't got that. Right now, most people who build houses build money from their savings and monies that they get. Very, very few people have access to mortgages. There have been developments in the last few years. There's the NMRC, the Nigerian Mortgage Refinance Company, which has been set up by the Jonathan government that just went out. The whole idea being to help refinance existing mortgages. The idea being that primary mortgage institutions and banks that finance mortgages are able to get their money back and to roll. Therefore, mortgages, a greater number of mortgages can be provided for ordinary people. We're hoping that people are able to tap into these facilities that are coming on stream now.
So you can get, because if you talk to somebody who lives in the West, a mortgage is a loan that has a term of 25 to 30 years.
Yes.
But I see people talk about mortgages in Nigeria of 5 years, 10 years, and so on.
Yes.
Do you think that's something that is deliverable?
Well, the fact of the matter is that we don't really have too much long-term money in Nigeria. It's just a fact of this financial system. You can't give out money long-term if you haven't got the deposits long-term.
Yeah. Okay, now, Fuller's Institute, you've talked about the foundation. What is their long-term goal, vision for Nigeria? I mean, what's their long-term vision for Nigeria?
The Fuller Foundation hopes to see a Nigeria where everybody, and I mean everybody, will have access. Whether you choose to take up or to seize the opportunity of that access is a different matter. But we have a vision of a country where everybody will have access to simple, basic, affordable housing.
And how long do you think that you can deliver on that vision?
It's probably going to take many years. It's not something that that one organization can do. We're simply going to play our own part. We hope that others will join us too. This is like a rallying call, really, that we hope that other organizations, other developers as well, who have been focused on a high-end market, are able to begin to focus much more on the ordinary people, on building with a much smaller profit margin, but at scale, and skill is just so important to be able to make proper returns in this market.
Okay, now what do you think our viewers can do either to support your goals or to benefit from your goals? What would they need to do?
Yeah. Well, to support our goals, we would love for people who would be interested in investing in housing to talk to us. We'd love to see a situation where people become a lot more sensitive to providing housing in their own jurisdictions. I mean, I speak now of corporate bodies. I think there's an opportunity here for organizations to decide to begin to provide housing for staff. We are beginning to talk to organizations like that to help their staff, particularly much larger organizations whose cooperative perhaps might have a piece of land they want to develop. We'd be willing to develop that land into affordable housing for them. That's one thing that they can do. We'd also be very happy to work with people, to work in partnership with people who are ready to invest, as I say, in housing. In terms of benefiting, obviously there's a limit to our capacity at the moment. We're working around the Abuja area, but if you're around the Abuja area and you get in touch with the Millard Fuller Foundation, mffhousing.com.
We'll put that on the screen at the end of the program.
Right.
So if they get in touch with you, do they have to go through some screening?
Certainly, because as I've said before, we're for the poor, we're for the ordinary people. We are not targeted at people who have alternative means of getting housing. If you have a comfortable job, you're earning a good salary, and you could easily walk into your bank tomorrow and get a mortgage there, then you are perhaps not the sort of person that we're trying to serve.
Okay, now, what if our viewers have a piece of land somewhere and they really don't have any use for it? Would you be prepared to take that as their investment, for instance?
Wonderful. We'd love to partner with landowners. We would love to partner with landowners. People who have fairly large tracts of land, of course. We would imagine not building less than 200 houses at a time. So perhaps we're looking at about 10 hectares or above, or at the very least 5 hectares or 50,000 acres, 50,000 square meters. Okay. Yes.
So, but obviously the most important people would be the state governors.
Yes.
Or state governments, let me say. Exactly. Because if they were able to put land at your disposal and partner with you as their investment in providing housing for their people, that will obviously make your work a lot lighter.
A lot lighter. There's just one more thing that they need to do to ensure that there's off-taker financing. So we've got to get that side tied up. We come in with project development finance. If they come in with the land, we develop the houses, but there's got to be off-taker financing, mortgage financing, ready and waiting, so that the moment houses are built, they can be taken off and we can be paid off to build more and more houses, and that's the way the cycle works.
Okay. Now, is there anything else that you would like our viewers to know about your foundation?
Yes. Well, our foundation is built on Christian principles, as you realize, as you know already. We are a Christian organization. Even though we don't discriminate, we build for everybody. We work with all peoples. We believe that God has sent us out to do this work, but we do it for everybody.
And I guess the Fuller Foundation is all over the world.
Yes, the Fuller Foundation is in about 20 countries around the world. We're headquarters in the Americas, the state of Georgia, in the United States, yes. And working with several partners, both in Nigeria and abroad.
Sam, it's been a pleasure having you on The Heart of the Matter. Viewers, we've thoroughly enjoyed presenting this episode of The Heart of the Matter to you. We'll look forward to seeing you again when we come back next week with another episode of The Heart of the Matter. Until then, stay blessed.